and welcome back to our channel, Adventure Mom
and Dad.
This one is going to be super short and super informational for you moms and dads who want a road trip with a baby or a toddler, which seems super scary. We've actually done it, I don't know how many times, a lot of times actually, and every time we do it we learn more tricks and hacks that we really like, specifically with items. So I thought I would do a video of our top 4 items and also some tips and tricks I'll throw in there that we really rely on to have like a happy road tripping experience and not a screaming one, you know. For those of you who are new to our channel, and for some background and reference, I'm Ariel and this is Dayton, and we have a baby named Ian who's currently sleeping. We just moved from New Hampshire to Charlotte, North Carolina area, so we just went through a massive road trip, so definitely check out those videos if you want to see how the actual move went or the road trip went. And also for some future things, we are going to eventually come out with another video very similar to this one, just for airplanes and not road trips. So in 6 days, we will be flying out to Ireland with almost 2-year-old, not quite, he'll be 20 months. So we'll have more tricks and hacks for like airplane, because that is slightly different than road tripping. And also, if you like this kind of video where it's informational on ideas for traveling with babies or toddlers, definitely give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Okay, so let's get into it because I want to make this video super short. Do you want to talk about the first thing?
So first, item number 1 is an iPad. I believe we still have the iPad Generation 2, but it doesn't really matter. The important thing is, like with Disney Plus and other services, you can download music and movies to save to your iPad and play when you don't have Wi-Fi. And while, like, you know, sometimes you want to limit the screen time for your kids for a road trip, we found, especially at Ian's age, it's really good for him to like watch a story and develop and occasionally fall asleep. So our number 1 tip is to get an iPad.
The big thing here, I think, and we would both agree with this, I think we both value the iPad more when we started letting him borrow our phones. Because it's very frustrating if you just need to give him something and you're not prepared. You can buy really fancy things like screens and stuff like that, but an iPad does the same exact thing that like a smartphone would do. But that means you can have your phone while he's watching something.
And the nice thing is the iPad also doubles at night when we're traveling. We play a shushing sound on YouTube, so you can buy it in a separate device that will shush for you, but instead of that, we already have the iPad. When you're in a hotel, you have Wi-Fi, so we just use YouTube for that. So it's useful for other than just specifically road tripping.
For the second thing, I'll cover that, is an iPad holder. So originally, I called myself a TV screen because I'd hold it for him, because if you hand it to him, immediately it's gone because his little grubby fingers are like push, 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 and then everything disappears and things get deleted and apps get moved. It's miserable for people who are a little bit trying to be organized. Again, you can find some really fancy like screens out there where you can get it put onto your vehicle, and I didn't really want that because he's not always gonna need this as he gets older. But at least for now, we have an iPad, and then we bought a relatively cheap iPad holder, popped it on the back of the driver's seat, which he's right behind, and then he can't touch it. It's also in a location where we can be charging the iPad too. So that has been a lifesaver for my arm. So I don't have to hold it the whole time.
And a particular brand we got was TFY. We found it on Amazon, but what I like about it is it's a wide band that stretches, so it will fit around probably, I'm assuming, any headrest. So basically just stretches down and you can tighten it, and so that seems like it will work for most any van, and it will hold both, I think, an iPad 2 and an iPad 4, the current generation. And I say that because they're slightly different dimensions, but even though we have the slightly smaller one, being older, they fit in perfectly fine, and it works really well. It keeps Ian's hands, feet, everything away from it. It's great.
He does it with his feet too. His little toes are like, eh. The third thing.
So our third item is a traveling high chair. So our particular brand that we got was called Summer, but basically it's like a little lawn chair, but like Ian size, so 1.5-year-old size. And then it has a table that you can slide on, it clips in. And for the most part, he actually can't take it off, even though he's a pretty strong kid. Like, he can't just like remove it and stand up. But lately, because we came to the apartment, we didn't have a high chair, and he just loved going to his seat and having his place to sit. So it works really well for us to when you don't have a high chair available where you can put your kids. Also means you can have meals at your hotel or Airbnb when you're traveling instead of having to eat out all the time.
Also add to that, we didn't use it that much on the road trip itself because we were eating out a lot, which meant he ate with us at the table. But if you're camping or if you're going to an Airbnb and plan to eat in the Airbnb, those are the two main places where I think it's the best. The way we found out about it is actually via families who live in a van for short amounts of time. They use it, or like campers. So if you're doing that kind of road trip, that's when that seat becomes like really important. But also we found like at an Airbnb, if you want to eat at the Airbnb sometimes, it's nice to give him a little place and a little area to have his food. Okay, so the last thing that was going to be part of this video and my personal favorite is the slumber pod. So this last trip we just did was the first road trip that we have used the slumber pod, and I'm kicking myself that we haven't had it for other trips because like I remember one time we had an Airbnb that was super bright.
Right.
So it's just, there's multiple purposes for the slumber pod. So what it is, it's literally a little tent. Like it even has like the tent poles. Like if you know how to set up a tent or have ever been camping, it'll seem super simple. But basically you set it up as a little tent and it goes over a pack and play travel crib. Wherever we go, we always bring his pack and play travel crib with us, and that's what he sleeps in. The problem is sometimes it's really bright because there's not a nursery. Sometimes he has to share a room with us and we go to bed a lot later than he does. There's multiple purposes for the tent. So just to explain some of the pros of this slumber pod is it is a blackout tent. So when he's in there, it's dark. It also has little pockets to hold like a camera, so you can still have like your little camera looking at him if you have like one of those screen monitors. Also, I think this was the big thing for me. When he goes into his pack and play and into his tent, who's to say he's not in his normal nursery? So for him, like traveling, it adds a lot of security actually, because if that's something he's already comfortable with and used to, then all of a sudden, no matter where we go, whether it be Ireland and like or multiple stops along the way on a road trip, every time he goes into his little room, it's his nursery. So that's also been, I think, a big plus for us, especially if we're sharing a room. So this last trip we stayed at hotels, which a lot of times we prefer Airbnb over hotels just because then we can have more than one bedroom. So like one for Ian and one for us. But in this case, we stayed at hotels because it was more practical, especially with the activities we were doing. And he stayed with us and like we had his noise machine on. He went into his little dark room and he was asleep by 7 and we went to sleep by 10 and it worked out perfectly. That one I think is like the biggest game changer for our traveling and road tripping. So the last thing is not an item, but it's just a free trip for anybody who's road tripping with a baby, and it's something we found very helpful, especially on this last trip.
So a free tip is to set an area up in the back of your vehicle or side of the vehicle if you have a car to have a baby changing station. So one, there are times that bathrooms aren't readily available. 2,
or disgusting.
That's what I was gonna say. Or 2, the ones that are available are really gross. And so it's just easier. So we just basically had his changing place that he changes normally his house. It's in the basket for us. So that in the van, then we also had diapers and wipes right there, which became very useful when Ian had an accident and poop went everywhere and he was playing with it and we were just in the middle of an interstate. So we just took the first exit. I have no idea if there was a gas station nearby. It didn't matter. We just pulled into a parking lot. We changed him, cleaned him up, and we were able to go again. So it's very useful. We have found that the best in a road trip, and it helps if you have an SUV or van, but it even works in a car because we did our first road trip in a car and it worked just as well.
The important thing we want to pass on is that road tripping with a baby should not be scary. Babies actually really like the stimulation of learning and seeing new things, going places. They also really like the attention that mom and dad give them on a road trip, because like normally in your routine, you know, there's chunks of time where Dayton doesn't see him or Dayton's watching him and I don't see him. But on a road trip, he gets our attention 100% of the time. If we're prepared, Ian actually really likes traveling and actually really likes road tripping. With a little extra planning and also with some extra items, it can really make a road trip or a traveling experience a really good experience even with a baby.
So down below, you're gonna find a link to all of the items that we mentioned here. These are Amazon affiliate links, which just means we're part of a program where they pay us a little bit of money if somebody buys something from one of those links. Just want to let you guys know that.
And that's all for today. Definitely stay tuned. There's very fun things coming up in the near future and a lot more traveling. But until then, bye! And just to wrap it up, this is how small everything is once it's packed up. So here is his mini high chair in a tiny bag. There's his slumber pod in a tiny bag, and of course iPad in its carrier, and then also travel bed. So when you actually close them up, they travel really well in very small packable sizes, which we are planning on taking the travel bed and the slumber pod and the iPad carrier with us to Ireland. Not the high chair, only because we aren't camping there. So we'll be planning to eat out most of our trip, which is why that's not necessary, but the rest of it, going to Ireland with us.